Hello and welcome back to Analog Stick Gaming. We have a special guest with us. And of course, I'm Jeff Young, the founder of Analog Stick Gaming, and joined as usual with fellow ASG co-owner Jordan Andau. However, that new face to the mix here is none other than Spider Studio co-founder, among other titles, Jehanne Rousseau. I'm gonna mess that name up all the time here.
Don't worry. It's okay.
Jehanne, thank you so much for agreeing to the interview today. It's an absolute honor to chat with you. How are you doing?
Well, I'm fine. I've been a bit sad these last days, you know why? But yeah, I need to get over it and continue creating what was always my favorite things to do.
Nice. So yeah, obviously the news that Spiders has shut down has been kind of a big topic, at least for me, just because I absolutely love the studio. So I want to say, first off, I want to say like you've had a huge impact on some of my absolute favorite games, with Spiders being a studio I could always count on for experiences that I just simply adored. Bound by Flame, Technomancer, which I played a little bit last night, and especially Steel Rising, were extremely fun games and featured rich worlds with interesting characters. And Spiders has always been a studio trying new things instead of repeating the same concepts over and over again. So it was a great contrast to what AAA was doing year in and year out. So we'll start with now you've personally had a very interesting and maybe not widely known success on several occasions, with receiving the Pegasus Prize for Personality of the Year from the Academy of Video Game Arts and Techniques, and also being awarded the Chevalier, I can't even say that word, of the Natural Order of Merit Medal. Do you think that Tonic Trouble for the Game Boy Color, which I believe was your first developer experience,
Yeah.
would lead to such a rich and expansive career?
No, to be honest, it was already crazy to work in video game back at the time. I wasn't sure that it. I'm sorry, I've got a cat who is trying to interrupt us, but
Oh, my cat and my corgi are going to make an appearance at some point.
But yeah, honestly, back then, just being able to work in video game was already crazy, and it was nearly impossible to imagine what would the video game become in the coming years. It was like it was in 27 years ago, so it's been a long time. And back then it was the first game was on Game Boy Color, the one we finally was released, but we began working on Game Boy. So you remember the machine, black and white, and it was obviously a completely different kind of work than the one we're doing now as a developer. The teams were different, very small, very, I would say, we need to be agile. We need to be. I was doing several jobs at the same time. Like I was obviously doing the pixel art, but also animation, also game design and level design mixed with some other stuff. Like I was also handling the team in some ways. So it was, and we were three, and then of course, some games arrived that were a bit bigger, and then the team went bigger too. And that's why I was able to grow in my own career. I obviously changed companies. I worked for Gameloft also on mobile, which was kind of strange because it was like going back a little in history. When I was in RFX, the first company I worked for, it was like Game Boy, and then we went to consoles, but I mean bigger consoles, and the first Xbox, for example. Even if we were not able to release a game, we were already working on that console when I left. And then I went to Gameloft, and I went back to the mobile. But you need to remember that it was really the first mobile with games online. You remember the Nokia, the green and gray thing, the nearly indestructible? Yeah, I worked on that phone, for example.
Yeah, the N-Gage or whatever.
I worked also on Engage, but
Okay.
yeah, it was like, Engage was already colored, and it was already, even if it was probably the worst console ever, it was, it was already something a bit more advanced. But at the beginning, when I arrived, it was really like doing again the Snake game or this kind of very, very simple things in black and white.
I mean, you mentioned Snake there. That's probably the best mobile game of all time, right? Because people would spend so long on their tiny little brick phone that youngsters today don't even know existed. and they would just play that game going left and right with the snake. Like, so
It is,
yeah,
there was this kind of games. There was also it was not obviously the first Snake released on mobile, but back at the time, every mobile company were having these different games done with the same kind of, I would say, concept, but with different names. There was also a kind of what was the name? It was visual something, but it was also this kind of small games that you could do in a very small phone screen.
Yeah.
And then I moved to some more interesting game, and I was able to reach Monte Cristo, and it was I think really the beginning of the serious part of my career, I would say.
It's kind of hilarious how like mobile games have gone from like the most like unrecognizable mess of pixels to like getting like Resident Evil 8 running on an iPhone. Like it is the technological like gap just felt like it just didn't have that infancy. It just went.
It went super fast. I remember when I was arrived at the Game Loft, so it was in 2000, I guess 2002 maybe, or 2003. I can't remember precisely. But then in 1 year and a half, we went from the Snake or Space Invaders in black and white. Yeah. And when I left the company, I remember my colleague were watching video online, and it was the first time that they were able to run Doom on a phone. And so in like 1 year and a half, they were able to do like a big part of the video game story history, but like crunched into such a short time. So it was really interesting for that, working on mobile, because the technology was going super fast, and it was super impressive how it was changing and evolving every day. We had some calls and meetings with the people creating the phones themselves, and calling us like, oh, can you test that one, or can you do a game on that one? And it was like nearly every 2 days the phone was different, and we had to to everyday update with the thing we were doing, because it was not working otherwise. So yeah, it was a real strange way to work, but it was also interesting.
Oh, for sure. What started your interest in wanting to create video games, especially going on to not only like write and direct them, which I would assume has to be a massive undertaking of like balancing like many plates. Like that's got to be an immense amount of work.
I began playing video games. I was like 5 or 6 or something. I was lucky because back at the time the consoles were expensive and not as widely I would say in every house as they are now. It was something more rare and difficult to find, but I had this console home. It was a ColecoVision, so it was very niche.
I had a Coleco as well too, yeah.
And I used to play a lot, and but obviously for me it was like kind of dream thing. Then later on, I had an Amstrad and a computer, and I was able to play some more advanced game. I remember the first time I saw some really colored animation that was looking like something, not just like small pixels anymore. It was like looking like something real. I think it was like. What was this? This a game? Last Crusade is
Okay.
Is a game based on the movie, and it was like, wow, this looks really crazy. I would love to do that, but it was like kind of dream thing, and it doesn't sound obviously serious. And talking with my parents and telling them I want to work in video games would have sound completely crazy. So obviously I did not that. And I did some studies in French literacy and ancient languages, so Latin, Greek, these kind of things. And I'm still completely obsessed with antiquity in general, so history, antique history, and also language. And then I didn't want to become a teacher, so I was also studying art at the same time. And while talking about that, and I was quite young. I was like 21, 22 back then, with some friends, with whom I was playing tabletop RPGs. So we were, a small group of players meeting like nearly every 2 or 3 days, playing role playing games nearly all night. And I was telling them about what can I do? I love to write, I love to draw, and I love to play. And I was also a game master. We were obviously changing from day to another, but this was something that I really loved to do. And there was one of the friends said, "Why not try working in video games?" I said, "Oh, please, it's a dream job. No one can reach this kind of jobs." And in the end, I sent to some people who knew some people who knew that was looking for an artist, a 2D artist, and I sent a CV and I explained, in letters that I was completely passionate about these kind of things, and I was hired. So, and it was my first job in the industry.
Nice.
And then I never really left.
What were some games that like kind of inspired you to kind of even push further into that?
The narrative part, I would say that I've got some. So there was really this tabletop influence in my life that was really, really important. I loved writing stories. I loved creating words, alternate scenario for tabletop games. And then I discovered that there was these games. I think maybe the first one I played that really was a shock was Baldur's Gate 1. Maybe, kind of. But there was also this Japanese RPGs. There was also, like, for example, Final Fantasy VI, I think, was probably one of my favorite back then. So there was these games where I realized that because for years RPG were mostly about dungeon, advancing, killing monsters, no story or nearly, and it was a bit missing for me, even if I could enjoy also the dungeon crawling part. But and then I realized that some of the games were having this strong history part, and that's when I said, oh, I would love to do that. I would love to write also, not just doing working in video games and doing characters or pixel arts, this kind of things, but also being able to really create the words I was already creating for tabletop, bringing them into video games. And I think that it goes at the end of my first job at RFX, I was already trying to do that a bit with them. But it's really at Monte Cristo that I was able for the first time to really, do that and bring our own ideas with the whole team that was really on the same page and really wanted also to be part of this adventure of bringing a new world to existence.
Nice.
So talking about narrative in games, because that's obviously a big driving force for you, but games have changed a lot over the last 2 decades. I think at one time people just sort of felt like games were this silly thing and you couldn't have serious narratives in them and stuff like that. And then probably around 20 years ago, that really started to change. We started to see some serious changes with things like, The Last of Us eventually coming from Naughty Dog and much more serious narratives. What do you think caused that change? And was that something that excited you?
I would say so. I remember also Planescape Torment, was already a bit weird compared to the other games around. And for me, it was really exciting because I was a dungeon master for Planescape for years. So it was like, wow, finally they're doing it. And the way they treated this game was, I think, more serious than a lot of other games at the same time period. Obviously, now it changed and it's evolved in the better way. But I think that Planescape for me was really the realization that, okay, we can do some more mature stuff, and it's great. But I think the main thing that changed the industry is the fact that the public, the gamers have changed. When I began playing, probably I was amongst also the first people playing, in general. So children, and back then it was really sold as a toy. It was not even called video game. It was like toy, and it was like, obviously it's for children. And then obviously the game evolved on the technical aspects, but also I think the public playing them. And now, when you look now at the median age of the players, it's more or less like, I think it's in the 40s or something. So it's not for children anymore. And I think that when the industry realized that, they realize that people in their 40s want maybe some more mature stories and just, I can still enjoy Mario, but because it's fun and it's full of nostalgia, but it's not anymore about, you can't take the story seriously. It's just about fun.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
it's like
obviously-
the perspectives changed as well with like how it's perceived, because like even though Nintendo is a toy company, they're still producing like even like mature, almost like looking Zelda experiences where there's a lot of action and stuff, even Metroid as well too.
Absolutely. And obviously with that change in a more narrative focus in the industry and things like that, in recent years we've seen a lot of adaptations to other forms of media, right? We've seen like Fallout get a TV show, The Last of Us get a TV show, various different movies and things like that. Is there anything that you've worked on in the past that you would like to see adapted into some other form of media?
Well, it's always exciting, I guess, to see how other people can, work with what you've created. It's something I even enjoy with fan fiction or, or fan art. But movie or TV shows, obviously it would be, great for the IP, I guess. But there is always something that is a bit, for me, frustrating, because in the game I'm creating or I'm trying to creating, there is always choices. The fact that, you're giving freedom to players to create their own, to shape their own stories. And a TV show is a kind of, would say, passive way to enjoy the story. You need to take the one decided by a group of writers or the director, obviously. And it's something that I'm always a bit, frustrated with, I guess. But maybe something, based on the same world, but instead of trying to present the story of the game, trying maybe the story of another character important in the story. For example, let's say if they had made something on Grateful, they could have made the story of Constantine, for example, instead of doing the one of the main character. That would make more sense for me, because it's like, okay, it's your side project that can be connected. Some characters are common, but it's your stuff. But yeah, why not? I would be still curious to see that if it was existing.
Nice. All right. Let's see here. Do you find yourself playing anything currently, like anything new that really stands out for you?
I'm playing a lot, always, but really, like maybe 5 hours a day, something. It's really important for me. Nearly, I would say a night would be more true, because it's after work that I'm doing that. But the last games I've played a lot, I would say, I'm a lot into those games like Medieval Dynasty, actually, like Bellwright also. On a more narrative side, I would say The Alters was really interesting. Strange in, really unique way to tell a story. King Seeds, this kind of game. I'm into crafting, I guess. I need to craft again, so that's why there are a lot of games in that type of things. But I love this more. Well, not all of them are indies, but a lot of them are, and the different kind of approach on the gameplay, and I find it quite refreshing.
Good.
All right.
I did want to ask about one game that you may or may not have played, but given that it's so French inspired and everything like that, Clair Obscur, obviously major release from last year. What is your opinion on that game, if you have played it or from what you've seen?
I've
What
played
do you
it.
think?
It's I really enjoyed the world, and it's very, very well done. To be honest, I think that they've done an amazing work. But the more I was playing, the more I was realizing that it was not my type of game anymore. In the sense that it's very linear, and now I feel a bit constrained with that type of of structure, I would say.
Yeah.
And from time to time, I felt frustrated not being able to choose things or to decide a bit more about my own story. So I think this was something that was for me a bit frustrating. And after a while, I finished the game, changing that difficulty because I was a bit struggling also with a kind of combat. But yeah, I finished the story and I was happy, and I thought that really, once again, the way they did it is brilliant. But it's true that for me it was a bit maybe frustrating experience because of that lack of agency, I would say.
Yes.
All right. So shifting to Spiders, looking back at the legacy of what you've accomplished there at the studio, what are you most proud of, and what are some moments that stand out really amongst the rest?
It's difficult to choose. It's like asking a mother to choose amongst her children, I guess. It's like, I would say already having a studio for 18 years old, it's a lot. And it was already something that I'm really proud of, especially when we created it. We created it in 2008. It was just in the middle of the crisis as the last one. And it was not the best moment to create a video game studio. So that is already, a subject to be proud of. And then there was all the games, and all of them for different reasons are very dear to me. I guess that obviously because it was the most successful, grateful one is, probably more important than the others, but each of them brought me some things, and some characters and places. And also I remember I have plenty of memories of the work we had with the team creating the things, and really a lot of fond memories of this teamwork that was really, really great.
What actually caused the name Spiders? Was like my theory, and I'm probably entirely wrong, is there were 8 of you.
It's not bad, but no, we're 7.
Okay.
No, in fact, it was when we created the studio, we had this project that we were not able to realize at that moment. That was called Mars, and it was a game set on Mars. And because I'm a fan of David Bowie, that one of his group was called the Spiders from Mars. And we had also the idea that we wanted the name to be related to craftsmanship. But all the workshop things are already taken. And we were like, what is, crafting and waving also, especially waving stories, waving this idea of wave. And then obviously the spider came, and it was making perfect sense because of the game, and because of Bowie, and because of it's different reasons coming together, but in the end that was the Spiders.
Nice. We've touched on this a little bit, but the AA market seems to be shrinking every year. We've seen the closure of several studios such as Piranha Bytes, and while indie and AAA are generally doing fine, more or less, what's your take on the health of the industry, especially for AA games?
Well, I just want to add something. Indie is not going that good. Indie, but you can't imagine the number of indie studios that are never coming out of I would say, the depth of Steam. And there are many, many, many small indie teams that are trying to propose games that will just never be seen. So maybe it's less visible because most of them have a second job doing something else, or working for another studio, or even working in something completely different from video games. But I'm not sure that we can say that indie is going fine. AA is always, and was always, a bit in between. And because of that, it was always a bit difficult to succeed at that specific place. And what is, a double A game? I guess that, for example, you talked about Expedition 33. It's done by an indie team in the sense that they are small and not that many, but in the end they had a lot of time and money. So are they still indies, or are they now double A or even triple A? It's a bit,
It's
they're doing super fine. So,
and I think everybody has a different take on what a double A game is, right? Like, to me, double A has always meant it's a game where the studio has really big ambition, but they maybe don't have the finances to fully see through that entire ambition. So they just get as close as they can with the tools they have available to them. That's the way I've always seen it.
I will always be double A because I'm always ambitious. I'm always willing to give as much as I can to the players and to the game we are creating. But yeah, I'm never have enough money to do it. So in the end, well, I guess we'll be in that specific spot. But yeah, it's true that it's not easy. But honestly, when you're looking even at AAA companies, they're not doing that fine too. Look at Microsoft, Sony, or Ubisoft, or in France, for example, which I'm more aware of. They are also letting a lot of people go, and it's because it's not going that well. I guess that the problem is more general to the game industry. Is that during the post-COVID part, there was a lot of money, going through video games because obviously while people were not able to go out, they were playing a lot, and a lot of people saying, "Yeah, I've got a lot of money. What can I do with it? It sounds interesting to put that money in video games." But
it's like Animal Crossing just blew up because of that too, and it was massive.
And the problem is that they didn't realize and didn't knew really much how it was working into the industry. So the fact that a game takes a long time to be done. So if you put the money in, I don't know, in 20, the game will probably be released in 25 or something. So you need to be, patient. And they're not. Most of the time, they want the money to come back soon. Yeah. And they also didn't realize that now that, the lockdown was ending, people will get back to work and would probably have a little less time to play. So obviously, video game would sell a little less. So I think it's more like a global economic thing that is hurting a lot of different companies. AAA companies, because they are bigger, richer in general, they are more able to sustain the shock. But AA, they're just not strong enough or not rich enough to be able to resist it. And indies, they are that small that they can, they resist it just by being agile and just say, okay, never mind, I will do a second job for a while and then I will come back. So it's a bit different, I guess.
So you actually hit on something that I wanted to ask about, because obviously there was this huge expansion of the industry during the kind of COVID period, as you said, where so many people were playing games. People that probably didn't even traditionally play games were sort of picking up and playing games. And then they've gone back to their normal lives, right? So there's less money coming in from the consumer now. So my question is, and I'm going to try and frame it in the best way as possible, because I know the industry is in a bad place, but is the industry really in as bad of a place as we think it is? Or is part of it about restabilizing to the kind of pre-COVID level, if that makes sense? Because there was this over investment and over kind of ambition because of the amounts of money coming in during COVID. Is part of this really bad situation actually just a kind of correction from the industry of, oh, we actually overinvested and now we need to cut that down again?
I think that it will take probably some time again. But it was a bubble, it popped and now, yeah, we need to bring the pieces together. But the industry will survive, obviously. Video games are still selling a lot, really a lot. I mean, like it's billions every year. So it's not, the problem is not there. There are still some people playing around, and even more, I would say, than the year before, because there are always some new people coming into it, some new countries also that are able to play more than they were before, this kind of things, new territories. So I'm, maybe because I'm an optimistic, I don't know, but I'm not afraid for the video game industry. But I'm concerned for a lot of good people that were let down by what is happening now, and that may feel that despaired or I don't know, disgusted maybe about what happened in the different companies, that maybe they will leave the industry, and it's too bad because they were very good people. But in the end, it's like there is a kind of ability for the whole industry to reinvent itself, and it will probably change, had to adjust many things. Maybe the very big games with, 500 people working on it won't exist that much anymore, or it will be really, really rare. But maybe it's not for bad. Maybe it's even good for different kinds of games or different kind of experience and services. So I'm not afraid for that.
Well, I think you mentioned before we started recording, right, that there was previously this kind of crisis in the industry back in 2008, and a lot of companies closed down then, but there were new studios that came out of those closures, right?
Exactly.
And Spiders was one of those.
Yeah.
So that's
going
a
from
great
crisis to
thing.
crisis, I guess. When I began working in the video game industry, it was just before the very first crisis, which was in 2000. So yeah, I've been in in several crises. I promise it's not my fault.
All righty. All right. So it's 2005, and you join the team at Monte Cristo and start working on Silverfall, this being your first kind of significant effort of a larger scale game. What were things during the development of Silverfall that you kind of kept with you and then kind of brought to Spiders, and even what you kind of still practice to this day?
Well, the team first. Well, not all of the team, but a big part of the Spiders founder, like I am, were coming from Monte Cristo and from this specific team. I guess Monte Cristo at that moment, after Silverfall and its add-on, decided to move into another type of games. They wanted to do city builder, but massively multiplayer, which was for me something like, okay, sounds super strange. I'm not very inspired, and I guess we'll need to leave. And we left the company, but we really want to continue working together. So that's how the company happened to be created. And then I guess, there was this kind of very specific energy working together, where gameplay and story and even technical aspects need really to work together, and we had to think everything for them to be like a puzzle or something, in the way of creating it, I mean. And this is something that stayed with us, I think, in our way of working, creating worlds. I can move from, so Silverfall was an RPG, but in a kind of steampunk, funny, comical universe. And I can work with that kind of work. I can work in more, obviously, very more serious games and kind of universe, sci-fi, or fantasy, or even historical. I'm fine with it. But what is, for me, important in my way of working is how I can collaborate with others, and having this very strong collaboration, create on the creative aspect, but also technical, with this core team was for me really what was part of what is Spiders, and what was Spiders. Sorry, it's like this core team really gave a kind of philosophy, or I don't know how to say that, brand, I guess we could call it, to our games, into their art direction, the way of writing, and yeah, this was coming from this first experience. Obviously, there was plenty of other things that I've learned from it, like how to handle hundreds and even thousands of lines of dialogues on this kind of things. But it was very different from the way I had to write afterwards. Because back then, we didn't have the budget, and it was very rare to have the whole dialogues voiced over. It was a bit more done like it was like, for example, in the old Baldur's Gates, only the first sentence was voiced, and then you could have 10 lines of things, and so it was more wrote into, I would say, a literary way, like a book, like this kind of book where you choose what you will do, changing the page, this kind of things. And the more we had the means and ways to have voice and voiceover with actors, we had to shorten everything, because no one wants to hear someone talk for 10 minutes like that, and explain you everything. You can read it. Hearing it doesn't make sense. I guess also that the fashion of MMO changed a bit, the way of interacting and what the player were waiting for, all these interactions and dialogues. So we had to shorten everything and to make it more like a TV show. And so I had to adapt myself and change my way of writing based on that. And it was super interesting, and it still is.
Nice. So the first time I was made aware of spiders was Mars Warlogs, but a year before you guys released of Orcs and Men, which I didn't even know about for years. For those that don't know this was a world set in that the Styx games would continue to run with. Were you surprised at the success of the Styx character throughout the years, especially with that little fella breaking out and starring in those 3 sequels? And did you even have a chance to play those?
I played the first sequel, then no. But no, to be honest, I was nearly sure that among the 2 characters that were into Orcs and Men, so obviously an orc and this goblin Styx. Styx would be the star. And it was a subject of constant, I would say, infighting with the creative director of Cyanide, because he was found, obviously, of the orc, and like, no, but he's a hero, he's a good one. The goblin is just like a faire-valoir. It's like he's just the Jar Jar Binks of the. And I said, no, I won't make him like this. I will change him, and I will make him, cunning and ironic and even vulgar in some way, but funny. But funny, not like, but more like, some characters you can like, even if he's bad, something like that. Yes. And I think that for me, it was really like a way a bit to say to the creative director, okay, you've got your story with your orc hero, but everyone will like this and needs this kind of funny character, a bit acidic on the side. And it works.
It's like the traditional sidekick kind of thing that you see generally in Hollywood. You have your main hero who is like the focus one, and then everybody remembers the sidekick almost even more.
And clearly you were right, because they carried on with the Styx character for 3 more games, right? So that was clearly the right decision.
The problem with the orc is that by being, such a hero in the ID, it was a bit 2D. It was a bit flat, and Styx was far more interesting because he was twisted and he was wicked and he was like, and for that, I'm happy that I was able to create them. Well, I'm not created completely, but I brought to him a lot of his dialogues, for example, and also his way of speaking, and I'm very happy that this character was able to have a whole career after me.
Nice. So Mars Warlogs and Technomancer are part of the same universe. Was that always the plan, or was there something that felt more like that it was going to be a nod to fans than a more direct connection?
You remember that I told you that when we created Spiders, we had that Mars game in mind, and so we had this universe already done. I was even playing it in tabletop RPG. I play tested it on table before developing it into a video game, we had, a huge, obviously, when we created the studio, a very ambitious game in mind, but we were like a small team, absolutely no money. So, and we tried to find a publisher for it, but most of the publisher were saying, sci-fi for an RPG, if you're not Star Wars, it won't work. So,
Have they seen Mass Effect?
Mass Effect was maybe a bit too close.
It was meant to be Star Wars, and then
exactly.
Yeah.
So it is kind of Star Wars. So to say that, it's too weird. We're not confident with that. So we did Fairy, which was a completely different scale of game, smaller, and also designed for a younger audience. So it was probably easier to sell. Then we had the ability to work on a Fox and Man. But I was still, working and having really the will to develop this game set on Mars. It was still something that was really important to us.
Yeah.
And at the end of Fox and Man, we had them a bit of money on the side, so we decided to co-produce Mars Warlocks. But because we didn't have much money, we had to, to scale down, our idea of the story, and it was a bit written and thought as a short story instead of it's big enormous thing. We really cut it down to something short, but it was a good way for us to experiment into that universe. And then after A Fox and Man, we had this discussion, and after also Technomancer, Bound by Flame, we had this discussion with our publisher, and he knew that for us Mars was something important, and that we always felt a bit frustrated by Mars Warlocks, not because of the game itself. I love what we've done as a short story, but because it was a short story, and we had
the restrictions.
This bigger game in mind. And so he said, okay, maybe it's a good time to develop this bigger game. Just do it. And so it was Technomancer. So it was not much to nod to the player, even if some of the characters are here for that, like cameo of some people they may have seen in the previous game, but more like we are finally able to develop the game we wanted to do initially into that world.
Nice. So this is one question that I've always wanted to know. Was there a conscious decision to stagger your games by having fantasy and tech alternating? I asked since we had Orcs and Men, and then Mars Warlogs, and then Bound by Flame, and then back to tech with Technomancer, then Greedfall, then back to kind of a tech with Steel Rising, and then back to Greedfall, The Dying World. It felt like it was like a leapfrog of fantasy and tech.
I guess it's a bit of a way to answer to all the will inside the team, because I'm not the only one taking decisions.
Yeah.
Or at least I'm trying to listen to my colleagues some of the time. And I guess I was more interested at the beginning into working into sci-fi, especially since sci-fi for me, and you need to remember how it was back at the time, was a way to have some more mature subjects and more mature approach in general of the stories, a little less like the good knight saving the princess. But obviously I love fantasy. I've played tabletop RPG for years. My daughter is called Galadriel, like the Queen of the Elves. So and she's now, she was born before the movie. I need to precise that. But yeah, obviously I grew into fantasy, but for me it was always a bit tricky to do traditional fantasy. But our publisher was really more expecting, fantasy settings that are easier to sell on, at least what he's saying. And so that was a way to. It was always a bit of a negotiation. Like, they wanted fantasy because they know that it was their best selling game.
So it was basically one for them and one for you. That was how it worked.
Except that Grateful was for me really something that came from the heart. I wanted to create that game. There was this negotiation again about, fantasy is selling better, and it's true that it's selling better. And I said, okay, but please, can we get rid of the traditional medieval reference? elves and dwarves and things. I want to go out of something like that. I want to be able to create fantasy, but something different. And I was lucky enough there was a Witcher which has elves and dwarves, but their fantasy is a bit different than the one where was
It's more grounded.
Yeah, grounded and more, I would say even more historical in many ways. And I said, can I go in that direction, using more history and creating my own stuff? There was also Game of Thrones, was also very in fashion at that moment. So I said, let's see what you can bring, and that's how we brought Grateful, and we managed, I think, to create fantasy, but with having the reference of the 17th century instead of the medieval age was something more different, at least.
Well, it's like even Greedfall and Steel Rising almost fit like they're like alternative history takes of the same kind of era.
Exactly.
So that's pretty cool. Still back to Steel Rising. So Steel Rising felt like a moderate departure from what you guys were doing at the time, leaning into the Souls-like genre a bit, as many devs were kind of doing at the time with all the Souls-likes that are everywhere now. Do you feel expanding to a new genre was necessary for Spiders to grow? And what led to the idea of Steel Rising being the next project after Greedfall?
To be honest, the gameplay aspect was really coming from the team, the gameplay team. They really wanted to try to go into the Souls-like. They are, huge fan of this kind of gameplay. I'm terrible to it. I tried. You can't imagine how many times I tried, but every time I'm stupidly dying in a hole or something, and it's terrible. I'm very, very bad at it. That's one reason why Steel Rising has also this easy mode, because I was absolutely not able to play it, and I had to. But yeah, the team was completely passionate with this kind of games. We had already this kind of action feelings into our combat, but it was obviously for them a bit frustrating because I never wanted them to transform it into a Souls-like, because it wasn't making much sense for games like Grateful or this kind of games, because it was about a team, it was about obviously a different kind of gameplay. But after the release of Grateful, we had this discussion and said, we would really like to have this kind of gameplay. Okay, and then based on the gameplay and of the mechanic, it's containing the fact that when you're dying, you need to go back and you lose everything. That's where the idea of automatons came from, because obviously machines can die, people, it's a bit different. And from this idea, Steel Rising was born. But it's really coming from a will from the team that expected to be able to finally develop their Souls-like game, and they were really waiting for it.
Nice. So we get the announcement of Steel Rising in July of 2020, but we had to wait pretty much a year to get any gameplay. However, 2 months prior to the gameplay video, we were introduced to the reveal of Lies of P, a title that gamers would draw stark comparisons to for some time, given the era and the type of game. Did the announcement of Lies of P lead to any changes for Steel Rising, or part of any types of delay, even though you guys released like pretty much a whole calendar year before Lies of P?
No, honestly, not much. It was a surprise to see, this announcement, and to realize that they had a world that was kind of not similar, but a bit in the same mood or direction. But it was a bit too late to change anything on our side. We are a small studio. We can't just completely switch, and especially we had done our own announcement before. So, we went for it, and I guess we were lucky to be released before Lies of P, who had obviously bigger budget, bigger teams, and it was a great game too. But for us it was something like, oh, okay, it happens. let's do it anyway.
Nice. So kind of going with the catalog of what you guys have done. do certain titles kind of rise above others, like certain characters, storylines, mechanics, or things that you're most proud of? I'm assuming like the Mars Warlogs is kind of up there, as it was kind of like the birth of spiders in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I've got, I'm really found, and I've got really some kind of. It's strange because when you're writing in dialogues for characters for a game, especially since I'm working a lot alone on that, and for months you will need to live with these characters. So, and you need to really like daydream their dialogues, like how would they react to that situation, how would they, acting against that, or would they be sad or angry, and you can quite hear their voice after a while. So you're living with like this character. Obviously, I'm talking about the main characters, not the Guardi or the merchant there, but for really the companions and the main, obviously the hero or heroine of the game, and they become like friends. And from all these friends I had for all these years, I would say that obviously. Zachariah and Andrew, so characters from the Technomancer, Sean, and all the others were really important to me. Before in Mars Warlocks, also Roy with this very specific way of being and innocence, obviously very important to me. And more recently, I would say that. Obviously, Constantine and the companions also of the Grateful universe are very dear to me. But Constantine is a bit special, I would say.
So, Greedfall 2 is kind of like the first sequel that you guys did, because Technomancer is kind of like led from Mars Warlogs, but Greedfall, like in name wise especially, is like the first time you've really carried on something like that. Like, was there a reason to do Greedfall 2, or was there another project that maybe that would have been in its place?
No, it was the idea since the beginning. We managed with Greedfall 1 to create this world and to see it loved and enjoyed by a lot of players. Obviously, you can imagine that publishers say, "Oh, it's working. Let's do a second one." And I was happy for that because I had plenty of other stories I was able to tell into that world. When I'm creating a world, most of the time I'm creating it far bigger than what you will be able to see in the game. And so I had already plenty of other stories of other factions and countries and that I could talk about. Obviously, the way Greedfall 2, well, the development was a bit complicated, let's say it like that. But especially, on my side. But the idea at the beginning was really to say, okay, we've got all this world that was designed. We had, these countries, these other stories you can tell about. And we saw also that from the player was coming this kind of, but what is happening in that place? And who are these guys? And what is his faction? And we were never able to see that thing. Okay, we can do it. And so going back to this world was not much to tell the sequel of obviously the story that happened during the first game, but more to enlarge and this universe a bit like they did into the Dragon Age series, for example. Yeah, like the second Dragon Age is not telling a sequel of the first. It's like different stories in the same world. It was a bit like this idea, let's say. Even if, obviously, the second Dragon Age is maybe not the best example to give, but whatever.
I love Dragon Age too, except for going into like the same caves over and over and over again. That was the only
this
drawback.
Is a problem. This is the main problem.
Now, with Greedfall 2, you guys really overhauled the combat. Do you feel that you kind of left certain players behind doing that more so to chase kind of like maybe overcorrecting the criticisms that maybe the first game had for combat?
It's always difficult to say. When you keep things exactly the same, you've got players that will complain that, that it's just a new story, but in the end, it could have been a DLC. If you change the combat, some players say, "Oh, I was preferring the old one." You can't this is something I realized with these years of experience. I think you can't have everyone happy. I'm sorry for that because I would like, obviously, to have all the players
Yeah.
playing my games to be happy, but I'm afraid it's never possible. And we try to propose something different. Obviously, I'm not a game designer anymore, so but in the idea was behind it, obviously, to change the combat system or to alter it, still proposing, I would say, a more action version of the turn-based type of game, but being in between. And
Yeah, it's kind of like you guys went like Greedfall almost felt like Dragon Age Origins, and then Greedfall 2 felt like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Like
it's one of my favorite games too, I have to admit. So
yeah.
maybe I'm sorry, maybe it's my it's
Mhm.
because of me, but we try to keep two different options or different options to play it, and I hope that in the end players are finding their ways through it. But there was a lot of frustration in the development of this game, and maybe it's not the best place to talk about it yet. But
Yeah, absolutely. Because like it was just a very weird development with everything that went on, and yeah, we obviously won't speak to the negativity of that. But um, my number one question of asking a developer like yourself is, I know that some developers haven't appreciated the term Eurojank when it comes to describing games from studios such as yours, Frogwares, Piranha Bytes, and a few others, regardless of the region they're developed in. What has been your take on the term? Because I've always used it in a positive sense of being like the type of game that is within its own type of genre. I describe them as games that are fueled by passion and rarely fueled by budget.
what can I say? I would say that it depends always of the intention of the people using it, and
Yeah.
that actually there is this trend on the social talking about Europe poor and everything done in Europe is terrible, and obviously. It's not. It's a bit rude, let's say it that way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I guess, and I can understand why some other developers can feel a bit annoyed and or I don't know, yeah, frustrated by this kind of names because they feel like it's negative.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah,
I,
like
to
a
be
lot of
honest,
people be like, "Oh, this game was good, but like everything was jank or whatever." And for me,
yeah,
it's just like I love the Eurojank games. Like I love those types of games where they do have that kind of clumsy combat or clumsy animation or stuff
They have
that
some rough
they lack
edges,
they lack the
basically.
polish that like, Rockstar will spend 25 million working on this particular thing and then you guys ship it for 20 grand of that same type of thing. And there obviously is rough edges, but I love that stuff. And I think that's like, to me, it's almost like an additional character within those games where it has that kind of feel. Because the moment I see a game that that I would classify as Eurojank, it's on my radar. I'm 100% sold because it's just like that type of game I absolutely love. And that's why I've loved your guys' games, Frogwares, Piranha Bytes. Like I'm looking so forward to Sinking City 2 because I love those types of games. Even like the Call of Cthulhu and all that, where it has that kind of feel. So yeah, I just wasn't 100% too sure because I know like I think it was the creative director of the guys that did Stalker 2
Mm.
made comments about that particular term and saying like, well, it's most of it's not even Europe, most of it's this and that. So
I guess really it's because, yeah, so let's say the climate actually is not very nice, especially on the socials. So I guess it can be difficult, especially when you're confronted to some local difficulties, more economic things, and you're struggling to defend your studio and have the thing, coming from, yeah, once again, coming from the socials, it can be a bit brutal, but it's a completely different things when you know that the intentions are, positive and good. And for me, names are just names. Who cares? It's not a problem. The names are important when they are in my games. Out of my games, who cares?
yeah. So I know like you had left the Spider some time ago, staying in the freelance capacity, especially during Greedfall 2. But what's next for you? Like, what are like you mentioned that you had kind of a game, kind of you're trying to get going. Are there any like dream games that are like still kicking around your head? Like, if a studio came to you or a publisher came to you and said, "Hey, what is that type of game?" Like, do you have another Technomancer kind of in you, where it's like this very deep rooted kind of passionate game?
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously I have, and yeah, I can't tell much about it. Obviously,
Yeah,
on my freelance work, I can't talk because I'm under NDA, like that, and obviously
absolutely.
it's something I can't tell off. And but on my more personal work, yeah, I'm working already on some new things. And well, it's very, very early to talk about it, so it wouldn't make sense. But one thing is certain: video games were always my passion, and I won't left until someone is pushing me out. So, and honestly, I'm here to write stories and worlds for, I hope some more years, and I've got, yeah, still plenty of ideas. Video game is so always so rich. There are so many things that are still need to be done and to be invented. So I know we will do something new.
Excellent. Jordan, do you have any
Well,
last
I
statements?
just wanted to say really thank you for joining us. This has been an amazing conversation. I've really enjoyed it, listening to all your
Yeah.
answers and your insight about the industry and, RPGs and your clear love of video games. Like, it comes through the screen. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Honestly, it was a pleasure being able to to a little talk about all these good memories, because obviously there was some bad memories, but there was also a lot of very good memories, and a lot of incredible moments with the teams and games, and community also is something that I truly enjoyed. So thank you so much.
Yeah, like Spiders has just been awesome. Like, Jordan had texted me the news when I was at work, and I'm like, oh my god! And like, I was just like, because like
Yeah.
when Piranha Bytes was shut down, I was like, oh come on, like
It was a
I
shock.
want I want Elix 3. Like, they like it. Yeah, it sucks because you won't see those games. Like, those people will go on and they'll work on several other incredible games, but you'll always
Well,
have that like where
like we
like I,
said
I want the other
before,
Elix.
hopefully, the people who
Yeah.
were still at Spiders will rise from the ashes like a
I'm,
phoenix and
I'm sure
create a
that
new
there will be
studio. And
Phoenix Spider.
there will be some other companies, studios, or games. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. There
yes,
are some very good people in the team, and I know that they are also creative and they won't stop. They may be less talkative than I am, but they are really
well,
also passionate by
Yeah.
games.
yeah. Well, what I'd like to say as well is when you eventually have a project that you can speak more about, we'd
Mhm.
love to have you on again and speak to you some more.
I will remember that. Believe me, I will remember that.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
I'm
Thank you.
I'm definitely excited to kind of see what you do next. Just because, like, again, you brought a lot of amazing games. Like, I love Bound by Flame. I still was hoping for like that Xbox One version, but you guys didn't get kits in time. So I got to track that down on PS4. I have it on 360, and then I'm gonna pick up Orcs and Men and finally push through it.
Yeah.
But thank you very much again for coming on here and talking about all things spiders. So deeply appreciate it.
Thank you, both of you, and it was really a pleasure to be part of this. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys later on the next one. We'll have an episode coming up shortly.